We see Tether stabilizing around its dollar peg in the wake of what happened to Luna, which basically caused a lot of anxiety in the market. Now, two things here that I would say to kind of frame this. One, it's actually kind of a good thing that you saw Tether waver a little bit in the market, because it shows that it is genuinely trading. And when you see a stable coin of whatever sort that is just pegged to exactly $1 over time, that's actually a red flag. It's not so much a sign of confidence. However, the other thing is we're seeing it move towards $1, and that is for good reasons, because we've had a reliable redemption path for quite a few weeks now that seems to show that Tether does have real liquidity in its reserves. But we won't know the real situation unless and until we see Tether draw down much further, because in a basket of assets as big as theirs, which is like $68 billion or something like that right now, there is going to be a big difference between the best assets and the worst assets. And the real anxiety around Tether is that they might be holding commercial paper and short-term bonds from companies that could disappear. And so there is still the possibility that Tether is more fragile than the market is indicating right now. But Will, I see you nodding. What are your thoughts on Tether in the current moment, given a global recession that seems to be looming?
Yeah, totally. Really interesting story and an important one, right? Because Tether is basically the coin that almost everything trades against. It used to be Bitcoin and Ethereum that you'd be able to buy your token against back in 2017, 2018. But with the rise of stablecoins, USDT, USDC, and some others, those stablecoins became the thing that denominated all of crypto. And so if you're looking at crypto's market cap, then you really have to take into account the importance of stablecoins and the importance of the most dominant stablecoin, Tether. Tether definitely had its problem when Terra collapsed. It's almost expected though, right? A lot of people became worried. There was some contagion at the time. A lot of tokens started dropping, and Tether was naturally going to be like roped into this category of stablecoins. I can't think of like the number of stories out there that said that Tether was also collapsing at the time just because they're both stable coins. Mainstream media tended to get this one very wrong, confusing an algorithmic stable coin with an asset-backed stable coin like Tether. So we saw some drop in the price of Tether at that time, but that's happened in the past, and that's because it's pegged to the dollar. It doesn't necessarily mean that it always trades on par with the dollar. Those are two different things. It depends on the confidence of the market at the time and the dynamics of supply and demand for that token. Mm-hmm. And at that time, a lot of people were dumping it because they didn't want to hold it anymore, so the price naturally went down. The biggest thing here is that we saw not only that the peg returned after a period of time, but also that these redemptions happened, about $16 billion worth of redemptions. And what that means is that at least Tether Inc., the company behind Tether, has $16 billion to pay back to people who put $16 billion into the piggy bank in the first place. It takes a while to get that money back out to people's hands, but they did it successfully, and now the token can keep going. It's a big stress test that they passed, and I think it's going to take a little heat off of them. Of course, the Tether truthers are still out there, and I think that it's good that people keep having a critical eye on a project that has so much importance within the crypto space. But for now, if you're working at Tether or you're working at Bitfinex or any associated company, you're probably saying, gotcha, we're good. Jennifer too.
I remember what I was going to say for the last story, so I just want to get that in very quickly. So the SEC is not only going after U.S. exchanges, right? I think it's important if you're building in the space to know that if your product is available to American citizens, or if you haven't taken the necessary precautions to make it not available to American citizens, the SEC can still say that you fall under their jurisdiction. So there is a little tidbit. Now, onto the Tether story. This story also calls for regulation, right? There is a quote in there from crypto analyst Alex Kruger. He says, Tether has once again passed the stress test under extreme market conditions. However, I do not foresee Tether FUD to diminish in any significant way until there is stablecoin issuer regulation in place and Tether adheres to it. And that's a conversation we've been seeing since Terra Luna and even before that. I think it's really interesting. I read an article in Decrypt recently, I think it was yesterday, that talked about Tether getting into the encrypted video messaging game along with Bitfinex. And I wonder if Tether is now looking at how they can diversify. I think that Tether has proven time and time again that their stablecoin for now is stable, and it's not going to go the way of Terra Luna, despite those mainstream headlines, Will, that you brought up. But I wonder if we're going to see them diversifying into other realms of Web 3.
So I think that could be interesting. I'm not sure that if I was a Tether customer, I would actually be all that eager to see them diversify, because complexity equals risk, right? And so I wonder about that. But I did want to follow up on Will's point about the wave of redemptions. We did see a big bunch of redemptions. We saw some of that volume go over to USDC, which I will say, huge bullish for the sector that we now have two fairly comparable volume stablecoins. That, for a long time, there was a big worry that if something really bad happened with Tether, that was game over for this entire sector, because it is such a fundamental piece of infrastructure. And now we have USDC, which is regulated, which is relatively transparent. And so that is good. However, I want to respond to the comment that pointed to FUD. Which is, actually, I'm going to finish my other thought first. So we had that wave of redemptions, but I'm looking at CoinMarketCap right now. In the last even somewhat major redemption was actually on July 14th. So we're now almost 2 weeks with, it looks like, no significant drawdown in Tether market cap, or whatever you want to call it, their total circulating volume. And so that's good. That means that there seems to be some stabilization in faith in the system as well. The other thing I was going to say, though, is that my cat is clawing me under the table now, so I've lost my second thought. But that is the redemptions have tailed off, and so that is really a positive thing.